Welcome. We are going to get started. This is Allyship in Wealth Management. What is working now? This is a presentation put on by the Club of Women of Wealth Management at Columbia School of Professional Studies and the Wealth Management Master's Program at the Columbia School of Professional Studies. Very excited to share these fantastic panelists with you today and have a conversation about what is working around diversity, allyship, mentorship. These are words that get thrown around a lot, but we don't always get tactical and practical ideas of what we can be doing to bring more new faces and voices into the world of wealth management. Before I introduce our panelists, I just want to say a big thank you to our faculty advisor, who is Dr. Megan Lertz. She's a professor of financial psychology in the wealth management program. I'm your moderator, Julia Pimsler, and I am actually a student in the wealth management program, which is a 16-month fully online program designed for working professionals who want to enter or advance in the wealth management industry. I also want to say a huge thank you to the founder and current director of the program, Tracy Schwartz. She has been a big advocate for this panel and for bringing more diverse voices into the industry. So thank you, Tracy. I'll take a moment to introduce each of our panelists and myself, and then we will get started. Thank you so much for joining us. We do have time at the end for questions, so there will be a Q&A at the end. So anything we bring up you want to follow up on, just take a little note, and we'll come to you at the end in Q&A. Big thanks also to the whole Columbia team for helping us to put this on, and the Women of Wealth Management Club, who helped to conceive and plan and market this panel. So thank you to all of you. All right, let's start with introducing our panelists, and then we're going to get right into this great conversation. So first, I will introduce Lori Choi. Lori is Senior Advisor and Partner at Veris Wealth Partners. She's been working in wealth management for 15 plus years, and her firm is somewhat unique in that 60% of the management team and total employee base is made up of women, and it is Women's History Month. So this is a good time to hear from Lori and hear how that's going. Happy Women's History Month, and also other diverse groups, not just women. Veris is really setting industry benchmarks in that respect, and that's one of the reasons I'm so excited to have you here on the panel, Lori. She co-founded WISE, which is a community of women in sustainable investing, which I'm sure we'll hear more about. I'm also delighted to have with us Kathleen McQuinnan. Kathleen is a portfolio manager at Brown Advisory, and she's a longtime champion of women in wealth management. She's consulted with multiple companies on how to attract and retain women clients. Kathleen transitioned into private wealth in 2017 after 20 plus years in institutional equity sales and 7 years with a sustainability firm where she was able to build out their gender lens investing effort. We're also delighted to have with us Harry O'Melia. Harry is president and CEO of 1919 Investment Counsel and has worked in the wealth management industry for over 30 years. His firm works with high net worth individuals and institutions. They launched a Women and Wealth division 5 years ago, and that is serving women clients and doing incredible panels and works around the country to bring together women, and I'm sure we'll hear more about that from Harry. And lastly, but definitely not least, Richard Shaw, so happy you're here. He is principal and senior client advisor at Bessemer Trust. Richard is a leader in wealth planning and family office services. He has over 20 years of experience in the financial services industry and serves on the prestigious Certified Financial Planner Board of Directors, the CFP Board of Directors. And for those of you checking out this panel who maybe are considering a career in wealth management and financial planning, that is sort of the gold standard of financial planning. And Richard has also been a big champion and advisor to the Columbia Masters Wealth Management Program. So thank you for that, Richard. I know we're going to run out of time because any one of you could probably speak for 45 minutes and we would all be riveted. So I will try to keep us moving along. I'll introduce myself briefly before we get into the first question. I'm Julia Pimsler. I am the founder and CEO of $1 Million Women, which is a coaching organization where we're helping 1 million women small business owners each reach 1 million in revenues. We've been doing that for 9 years through online scaling and selling programs, and I'm a huge advocate of women's economic empowerment, which is why I decided to pursue the master's in wealth management. And just to set the table for this discussion, there are probably 3 stats worth sharing, and you might have seen them in the marketing materials for this, but if you missed them, they're the following. By 2034, we expect that, actually by 2030, even sooner, by 2030, we expect there will be 34 trillion under the management of women by 2030. Now, why is this happening? Partly because of transfer of wealth from one generation to another, partly because more women are building successful multi-million and sometimes multi-billion-dollar businesses, if you followed the IPO of Bumble and Whitney Wolfe Herd's story, and of course, more women in corporate America amassing significant wealth. So this is going to lead to a need for more women wealth advisors. Of course, not all women want or require a female wealth advisor, but many women do want to interact with someone who understands their lived experiences. That leads us to a second stat, which is only 15% of financial planners are female currently. So that does not represent the population, and that's something that we're trying to fix quickly with the help of programs like this and the kind of conversations we're having tonight. And the last stat I'll share is that CFP gold standard we talked about, 24% of CFP professionals are women, and they are actively trying to up that number. So there's a lot at stake in getting this right. There's actually a lot of wealth advisors retiring right now, and a recent McKinsey study predicted that there's going to be a dearth to the tune of 100,000 wealth advisors within the next decade. There just are not enough wealth advisors to meet the need. So all the more reason to be talking today about how do we bring in new voices, new faces. Many wealth managers are currently retiring. What is that new generation of wealth managers going to look like? So I'm going to start with Lori for our first question. And the first question is simply, what's some good news? What are some good things you're seeing out there? I think we could all use some uplifting news around diversity, whether at work or something you've experienced personally.
Yeah, thanks. So I think in terms of work, I mean, we have the blessing of being able to have a team again that is, a lot of our senior advisors are women, and so we have an easier time attracting more advisors to come in who are women, and so we're grateful for that. But it's really about building that culture, and I think we're seeing more advisors come in, also more fund managers that are women and led by diverse, underrepresented communities. And so that we're seeing internships come about, like BLX internship, for example. There are just more and more pipelines now for people that are underrepresented to come into our field and are realizing this is a great career. And yeah, we're excited about those trends.
Thank you for kicking us off. Kathleen, how about you? What's something positive you've seen lately?
I think more investors are becoming engaged with their own wealth strategies. I often say money is power, and how you invest, who you invest with, what you invest in. I think we are really seeing a shift. The research will say driven by women, next generation, but thinking about the power of their money and wanting to align their values and their priorities with their own wealth strategy.
Thanks. Harry, what's something positive you've seen lately?
So from my perspective, actually, I'm the senior member of the panel. I saw my picture. I was before I went gray, but there's been a tremendous change. I think there's a generational shift that's gone on. I come from my parents were the typical father handled finances, mother took care of the house. My wife and I went to college together, so I know that she's smarter than I am. We've sort of co-managed the family. And now I look at my kids who are actually even more sort of more involved in sharing responsibilities, whether it's child raising, whether it's the financials. They both have jobs that are pretty close to equal at this point. I think my daughter-in-law is actually probably the breadwinner at this stage of the game by a little bit. It comes and goes; they compete. But so I think that the whole makeup of our clientele is changing, and that there's actually, we'll talk about this later, I think, to some extent, but as our clientele changes, the people who serve them are going to change have changed dramatically.
Thank you. Wonderful. Richard, how about you?
So I would go as I'm going to answer this in 2 parts because I kind of have 2 separate hats. One is from the CFP board perspective, and then the other from Bessemer. From the CFP board perspective, we've taken, I think there are many different things we can be very excited about, but we've taken several steps to promote allyship and diversity. First, the number of women in racially diverse CFPs has been growing at a faster rate than the total number of CFPs. You look back in 2024, racially diverse CFPs grew at around a 9% rate. That's about 10% of the total CFPs. And women CFPs grew at around 5%, which is around 24%, which is a number that you noted earlier, Julia. While the total number of CFPs grew at around 4%. So we've got higher growth rates coming from both racially diverse and women CFPs. Things that we've done to really promote that have been, providing scholarships to qualified women and racially diverse candidates to pursue their CFP. We also have our Women's Council and Women's Initiatives, which advises and assists in the development initiatives to increase the number of women entering the financial profession. On the Bessemer side, we've also been very active. And there, here we've broadened the number. One of the things that we've done is broaden the types of schools and institutions that we've looked to go and recruit at. One of the examples there is that, we've actually now are recruiting at schools such as a Spelman College or Spelman University in Atlanta, Georgia. We've also then done two is that we have employee resource groups, specifically women in technology, and a Black employee resource group. So those are some initiatives that we are doing here at the firm, which I'm really excited about and which I'm seeing within the industry.
Thank you also for bringing up recruiting from unlikely populations, in the sense that the field has traditionally been very white and male. And if we just let it sort of solve itself, it probably won't, right? We're going to need to start reaching out to populations who haven't typically been drawn to this field. So love hearing that you're doing that intentional outreach. Thank you.
And I think Richard made a really good point about the intentionality of this. And I do think that, the traditional way of recruiting, people came to firms that looked like them. And I think that firms like Bessemer and ours, Brown, I know it, and Lori's obviously the poster child for this, but yeah, you want people to look at your website, people to meet people from the firm, say they look like, I feel comfortable there. This is not a firm that looks like a monolith. And so I do think there's much more going on in our industry right now to be intentional about
and
like our clientele.
that's on the client side and the recruiting side, right? I'm sure clients
both.
Right?
Both.
Look at the website and say, hey, nobody here looks like me.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing. I'm going to take a minute to just define what is an ally, right? This is the allyship panel. And not everyone really is familiar with that term. So an ally is a person who is part of a privileged group making a conscious and concerted effort to include, advance, and promote someone from outside that group to give them greater access. Because it's not just about bringing people in who haven't traditionally been at the table, it's how are we making them feel comfortable? How are we creating an environment where they're not the token person in the room, or where they can thrive and they can also feel they can bring their full selves to work? So I would love to hear from each of you, maybe a personal story. And Laura, I'm going to start with you again, because I remember when we had our pre-call and Allison introduced us, who you've worked with for years and who's fantastic. In fact, she practice some allyship in introducing me to you, because I invited her to be on the panel. And she said, no, I think you should have Lori on, right? So it's like, no, pass that social capital on to someone else.
Oh, love Allison. Yes. Thank you for that. No, absolutely. I think I remember saying that I joined Bears 15 years ago as kind of a support advisor to Michael Lent, one of our founding partners. And he's someone from the prior generation who is a, older white gentleman, but, so clearly wanting to invest in me and mentor me that he brought me to essentially all of his big client meetings, taught me just through osmosis and really intentional supervision over the years and mentorship over the years to lend that social capital, as you're saying. And it's not just him in the organization. Others like Allison have shared connections and relationships. Even there was an opportunity, to be on a board, and, a colleague of mine, really stepped aside and said, hey, I want you to take this. And so this has been something that I've been a beneficiary of, and I'm so grateful for. So thanks. It's so important.
And I'm sure you're now in the position of already paying that forward to others, given.
Especially through WISE, and in my company, working with up and coming advisors. Yes, definitely try.
Great. I'm going to change up the order. So, okay, Richard, Did you ever experience this kind of sharing of social capital or share an example where you helped someone else in that way?
Oh, I don't think anyone who is working in corporate America or who works in in an organization hasn't experienced this. And I was quite fortunate in my career to have experienced this. Mine is a non-traditional route where originally I've been working here at the firm at Bessemer for 20 years. And I originally started my first 7 to 8 were in our investment department, and I transitioned over from our investment department to the client advisory side, to the client facing side. And honestly, when I came over, I really didn't know all that much and didn't know what I was doing, to be quite honest. And I remember coming in and one of I'll call it an ally, my manager, my mentor, a person who was really helpful and instrumental, kind of he was like, hey, you should consider taking your CFP, you can consider getting close to your clients. But but in addition to doing that, he actually taught me the business. He taught me how do you communicate with clients. He brought me to his meetings. He basically he mentored and developed me, but that was part of it. He was also an advocate for me behind the scenes in those meetings, which I wasn't a part of, to basically advocate for me in terms of promotions and in different development opportunities in order to progress my career. And so, to me, an ally is someone who you can rely on, who you can talk to, who advocates and helps you in terms of the progression of your career. So I've been quite fortunate.
That's fantastic. Thank you. And I think it's worth pointing out that there are many people who are like, well, I don't want to stand in the way of my field diversifying. But I think what we're looking for at this juncture is, okay, but how do you actively help it along? And so these are the kinds of stories. Thank you. Kathleen, would love to hear from you.
Sure. As I was thinking about this question, what popped into mind was kind of a recent experience I had that reminded me where we all, can use the seat that we sit in. And so, as a wealth advisor, I had a client who was making a very generous grant from her donor advised fund of $1 million endowment to a not-for-profit that she was very supportive of, and she wants to go in early. She likes to give seed capital to these not-for-profits. And so this executive director, who she's very close with, needed to figure out and hire an advisor to manage that endowment for him. And he asked me to join the first call he did with a large bank. And we sat through that call, and it was awful. I mean, it was just, they hadn't, listened to some of the questions they had. They kind of talked through a lot of jargon, and it just did not answer any of the questions he had. And I said, this is just not a good fit. Afterwards, we did a follow-up call. And I said, I really feel like you are an organization that is focused on advancing Black men to leadership roles, that we should consider having a diverse slate of advisors that you talk to. And he said, I do not know an advisor of color that I could reach out to. And I said, let me go find you a couple advisors that have been vetted and trusted, and we'll do another round of calls. And he said, well, why don't I just hire you? I said, no, I really think we should think about mission alignment. You are an organization running an endowment. Let's go interview a slate of candidates. Let's make sure they're diverse. And so I feel like in that situation, I did step up, provided to be an ally, helped him identify some advisors, and he is very happy with an advisor, successful firm of color down in Atlanta. He's based in Baltimore, and so I felt like that was an important role for me to be playing.
That's such a great reminder that one of the ways we can all be allies is by taking that extra step, because sometimes it does require a little more digging, a little more calling around, who do you know, rather than just hiring the first person who's available. Not like you're the first person who's available, Kathleen. I'm sure you would have done an amazing job. But I think we've often all been in those situations. So thank you for modeling what that could look like. I love it. Harry, what about you? Any opportunity to share about when you were an ally or somebody maybe stuck their neck out for you?
Well, I think very early in my career, I had a number. I mean, I don't think anybody on this call would say that they've made their careers, they've had a successful career without the help of others. So I think that, allies, mentors, anybody who's, a lot of it, we've all had people who've helped us dramatically in our careers. When I got to my first job was at JP Morgan, and I was taken to almost, every meeting, and I would sit there and just watch people who were really good at what they did. These were really senior folks. And at one point, the head of the private bank said, he called me one day, said, I've got a job I want you to do. I want you to go downtown for the corporate meeting every Tuesday morning at 8. And your job is to sit there, take good notes, don't open your mouth. But I got to see how JP Morgan ran. I mean, it was the chairman of the firm, it was Lou Preston, and all of the heads of all the different groups. And so I sat there and I watched how decisions were made. I watched the repartee. I watched the sort of the funny jokes back and forth. They disrespected each other in fun, but I was sort of surprised that these people were human beings. So the idea there is that people took an interest. And we have to flip it. And it's the next idea is to sort of say, okay, people have done that for us. We have to do it. We have to do it for others. And so you have to sort of intentionally sort of say, I've got to make sure that I bring people along, that they can sort of see what I do. And the second issue is sort of people, whether it's women or people of color, it's just as important. It's not just me. I've got to sort of broaden. I actually have to consciously broaden my scope, because when I started in this business, it was not very diverse. I did have 2 female bosses. My first 2 bosses were women, and sort of worked well for me. I grew up in a very highly female dominated firm, but I did learn to sort of how to pivot back and forth between genders early.
Thank you. And yes, that example of, being sent into that room, what a privilege, right? And so
Yeah.
that's the type of thing we can do for others, is if there's a chance for someone to go be in a power room, the room where it happens, if you're a Hamilton fan, then, send someone in who wouldn't typically get a seat at that table. Thank you. Those are all such great stories. We have a couple more questions, but I want to stay on this, allyship personal stories a minute, just because I think these are the most helpful for people watching from home who maybe work in large firms, or maybe they run their own RIA, registered investment advisory. Maybe they're considering coming into this field. Is there anything else anyone would want to share about something they've seen that maybe could even be replicated or done at scale, right? This is going to take more than just a few people making efforts. Kathleen, I know you've worked so much on empowering others. Anything you're seeing happening that could be taken by our listeners and used in their firms?
Well, Richard's, the CFP board, I think, has done a tremendous job in, along with some other organization, is doing a lot of the research about, the human capital aspect of it. I mean, Harry's looking to hire the best and the brightest, right? And when we think about who are the best and the brightest going forward, it is a much more diverse group of candidates out there. And, I think about this as an advisor myself, is the client of the future looks a lot different than it has historically. And I think our entire industry, is trying to understand on how we can create an environment and firms and experience for all our employees to be successful, even though they might have a portfolio of experiences they bring to the role, that you just don't have to look one way to be successful. And I think clients are really helping to drive this because it's both risk management and business development. The risk management piece is, who are the clients today that we are not engaging with? They're already clients of our firm. For whatever reason, it may be a communication thing. It just may be they're not being seen. It just may feel like they're not comfortable in the environment we provide our clients. So risk management, who are the clients we need to engage? And then business development, the client of the future, the wealth, as you've already shared, is going into hands of, women and next generation people that have a different set of priorities than investors in the past. So I think, we're all looking at this lens in the industry. I think, all of us here today are trying to work on this because we realize, we need all of you on this call, because you are the future for our firms.
So we have to make a conscious effort, I think, as managers, to sort of break out of the sort of the traditional places that we look. I think there's a famous saying, "You are what your record says you are," and I thought we were really trying hard. I thought we were, a better firm than most. And if I really looked at the statistics 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago, it was not very impressive in terms of what the management team looked like, what the client base looked like. So you have to sort of say to yourself, why is that? And we're not looking in the right places. We're not attracting the right people. So why is it? Some of it had to do with how we presented ourselves to the public. But the second one was, where we went out and where we looked, where we decided to hire, not just to let people come to us, but we actually had to make a concerted effort to go out and find people because they weren't coming to us naturally.
We'd love to hear a little bit about when you founded the Women in Wealth Initiative at 1919 Investment Council, because as I shared, there's going to be so many more women clients, but you were kind of early on this trend 5 years ago. Can you
Yeah,
share?
I was lucky. And we had a sort of, our business is basically, the premise behind 1919 is that each client's different and it's really about the purpose of your money. Who are you? What brings you here? And what's the purpose of the money? We create very tailored, bespoke portfolios for each of our clients. And so they're clients who are older, the people who are conservative, whatever. And one of the senior women in the firm came to me and said, I don't think that, I think that there's a distinct difference between men, women, how they perceive risk, how they invest, where they are in life. They're faced with a whole different series of life circumstances, and we're not addressing that. We're treating everybody as though they're the same. And I said, well, that's probably true. I get that, and I'd had a few personal experiences that would lead me to believe that. But I'm not the nicest guy in the world. I didn't sort of say, just go do it. I said, okay, that makes sense. I understand it, but you're going to have to justify this thing in terms of economics, in terms of, you've got to do some work first. And so the person who came to me put together a team. Actually, Kathleen was a consultant. Hate to give competitors a shout out, but Kathleen really helped us put this together. She did a lot of the research about what is different between being a female investor and a male investor in terms of lifespan, in terms of earning capability, and so we put together a really strong research basis for launching the program. And so when we went to market and started to talk to people were shocked that we actually knew we were able to sort of give people data about experiences that were just sort of episodic stories from from time to time. So it's been a great effort. We started it in, I think, 2000. I think she may have come to me first in 2016, and then we've just sort of quietly built this, and we just improved the dialogue with potential clients, and frankly, it's allowed the flip side of that. I think it was Kathleen or may have been Richard mentioned what happens on the flip side of that is you have more women and people of color coming to you to work here, because now they start to see it as a firm that's committed to these things. And well, this firm's probably different. So there's a double-edged effect. One is great clients, the other is great employees, great people who want to join the firm to be part of it. So it's been a home run.
Thank you so much. And that's how we got to meet too, because
Yep.
we were on a panel together, and rather than just coming yourself to New York, you brought your head of the Women in Wealth program, and that way we could meet. So I'm grateful you created that, or we wouldn't have met. And I also
I just chimed in for a second, though, because I just want to comment to Harry's point, because I think it's important as it relates to the DEI initiative and especially what's going on today is why is DEI important? Is because it drives innovation. Think about what Harry just did, he noted in terms of what the employees brought. It basically enhances employee satisfaction because they're happier, they're actually seeing their work there, and it basically improves your competitive advantage. So when there is a business case as to why DEI is important, and Harry's example is indicative of that. And I just wanted to highlight that.
I'm so glad you did. Thank you. And also not becoming obsolete. I mean, when these firms that are not embracing the new population are getting evaluated by clients and the top talent, they're going to start to look like yesterday's news. All right, let's get into something a little more challenging. This has all been very nicey. I want to hear what could get in the way, because I think there are some people who just say, well, the population's changing. This is all just going to happen on its own. I know every person on this call has experienced a situation where they thought, okay, this wasn't right. This didn't go well. We don't have to tell like our worst horror stories, but what could keep diversity and allyship and mentorship from thriving in this field? Because it hasn't happened yet, or not at scale. So what needs to change? I'm going to go to Lori.
Yeah, I mean, I think, in all humility, we have a diversity, equity, and inclusion and belonging committee. We strive to improve our both our culture, our practices, and everything. And yet, it's not easy to bring different people who have never, different people from different backgrounds to always see eye to eye on every single issue. And so, I think it's an ongoing process. And I think for some firms that maybe are less committed to it, they might say, "Hey, it's not the right thing for us anymore," or whatnot. But and that would be a bummer, especially towards the business reasons to continue supporting, inclusive environments. But I just think that it's a long term commitment, and I think hopefully we those headwinds get overcome. But it is something that it's a commitment. So I guess that's what I would say.
And you have such a high number of diverse leaders, right? 60% of your leadership. I know some studies have shown that once a minority group exceeds 30%, that they no longer have that feeling of like, oh, we were sort of, invited here to make things look better. So 60% is a great number. We'd love to get over 30% in the CFP and in a lot of these other rooms. Kathleen, what could get in the way? What are we not saying here that could get in the way? It's working out.
Yeah, so we got a couple hours here to go through
Oh,
this.
yeah.
So no,
Minute words. I'm like,
yeah, no. So I would say I feel like there's kind of three things. One is I think we often hear that our firm should be a meritocracy, and I would challenge that. I think it's the myth of a meritocracy, because I think many organizations too think, equality and equity are the same things, and they're not. Equality is you're going to give everyone the same thing. Equity is people might need different things for them to be successful. And so I think, language and understanding, I feel like, this goes to the work that one of my friends, Laura Liswood, has done when we both worked at Goldman Sachs. She's written a book, called The Elephant and the Mouse. And it's a lot about building inclusive work environments is understanding there are dominant groups and non-dominant groups. And in this case, she uses the analogy, if you put an elephant and a mouse in a room together, what does the elephant know about the mouse? Absolutely nothing. What does the mouse know about the elephant? Absolutely everything. And so when we have a dominant group that's in a company, in an industry, they have walked one path. The non-dominant groups, the mouses out there, they've walked a very different path. And we need to be the dominant group needs to be understanding and putting themselves in sometimes in that different path. So I think this is a challenge. We've seen organizations really commit to building inclusive work environments. There are lots of tools out there, but we still need to keep working on this because we need to evolve, and we need those non-dominant groups to become more dominant.
Thank you. And so would you agree it has to be a proactive effort, that it's not going to just solve itself? Or what are your...
We need everybody in your company involved, and from the senior leadership to working its way down. And there's tools for individual employees, and there's tools for managers. And I am concerned in the current environment that belief that DE&I isn't important, that we're a meritocracy. I think data is important, and I think we all need to really have the tough conversations and understand, can everyone be successful at our organization? I mean, that's what we're thinking about. What do we need to do to make sure that if someone needs things that might be a bit different, how can we make sure they can be successful?
Yeah, I think that you said something that tripped a comment. It's not something I made up. I've read it somewhere, but it was called diversity is a fact, but inclusion is a behavior. So this is not just about statistics. It's about sort of who you are as a firm, we're different. We're different genders, we're different races, but are we really different? I mean, that's you're tall, I'm tall, you're short. That's a difference, but we're not. But those are differences, but we're not really different. Actually, we may share the same values. I mean, everybody on this panel, we share a lot of the same values. So we're actually not that different. We may look different. We're different ages, we're different genders, different races, but we are actually aligned in terms of what really matters. What are the fundamental values that we espouse as leaders? So, and I think that goes to the point of trying to sort of showing yourselves in a way that people really understand that we respect people who are qualified, and it's not based upon people who look like me. There's I guess the question was, what's holding us back? And there is something about sameness. You know, you sort of feel comfortable saying, okay, I like him or her because they sort of seem like me. And that's a sort of self-fulfilling attitude. And you have to say to yourself, well, you know, just because the guy is 6'4" and he's got white hair like me, we may be actually really different. Most of my friends growing up who worked on Wall Street voted for a different party than I did this time. And we look the same, but we're different. And so we have to really understand what we're looking for. And there's more sameness than difference when your principles are the same. And then when your
What I'm hearing, Harry, sorry to cut you off, but what I'm hearing is to look out for unconscious bias.
Yeah.
And also that difference comes in the form of race, gender, socioeconomic difference, right? And that you may have way more in common with someone who doesn't look like you or come from your same background from a values or perhaps work ethic perspective. I know I've spent a lot of time around entrepreneurs, and I can't tell you how many entrepreneurs say, I would way rather hire a woman. They work so hard. They have such great attention to detail. Like and we don't want to be essentialist here. Not all women work hard and have great attention to detail, but a lot of us do. And there are populations who bring different things to the table.
Right.
Are very valuable. I did read in the same McKinsey article, and then I'm going to come to you, Richard, about the shortage of wealth managers, that one thing the field might consider is to diversify some of the roles in wealth management, because perhaps not as many women have studied finance. Like I don't have a finance or accounting background, right? But I bring a wealth of experience in sales, in entrepreneurship. And so perhaps the wealth manager of the future, there will be more room for people who bring different lived experiences and different professional experiences to this profession. Richard, over to you. What could get in the way?
Well, so I guess where I think of which could potentially get in the way, there are probably three main items. One is, I think, lack of representation in leadership. And what do I mean by that? When you have limited visibility into leadership roles for women and minorities, recruits or people who are applying may not feel that that might be an appropriate place for them because they don't feel that they may have a shot to get to that higher level. There's a saying, a woman by the name of Maria Wright Edelman, who is the founder of the Children's Defense Fund, and she basically said, you can't be what you can't see. I think this statement emphasizes the importance of representation. So I think representation is really important, number one. Number two, this is something I spoke about earlier in terms of our recruitment, but I think recruitment and retention challenges. Firms often recruit from a narrow or traditional network, perpetuating the homogeneity. And so we need to broaden that out. And so to me, what can get in the way is that we continue to recruit the same set of institutions that we've recruited for the same types of people that we have in the past. We need to think differently. We need to broaden that out to be a more broader set of types of institutions that we're looking at. And three, the third one is, industry biases. There have been longstanding biases and lack of inclusive policies that can create an unwelcome environment for diverse talent. That needs to change at the margin. And that's in how you can basically bring more people. So those are some of the things that I see as could be impediments.
Those are great things to point out. And I'll just add one more, which is creating an environment where whoever is the non-dominant group has a place to bring up things that don't feel comfortable. Because typically when you're coming into an environment, for instance, I went to Yale, and when I went to Yale, it had only been 20 years since they admitted women. They were one of the very last Ivy Leagues to go co-ed. And so there were so many things that were more difficult than they needed to be for women. For instance, very few women professors on faculty for us to look up to, not the same kind of facilities as there were for the men. And you need to create a place for the people who are new and are trying to make this their home, whether it's a university or a firm, to say, hey, this doesn't work for me. And that has to come from the top, because it's very difficult when you're the non-dominant group to come in and raise your hand and say, well, maybe this works for all of you, but it's not working that well for me. I've been that person in a lot of rooms. I'm sure many of you have too, and it's never easy. So that would be my invitation to anyone watching who wants to have a more diverse team or attract more diverse clients. Maybe create an anonymous space where people can share things, or at least go to people one-on-one and just say, hey, is there anything that's not working? Because that's the last thing people want to do, is come say, hey, something's not working.
And I would encourage the people who are just on the looking or watching, if they're students, I mean, choose the firm, not the job. You know, if you really look at, you can get a sense of firms if you do your work, whether it's the website, talking to people who've worked there or still work there. Find firms that reflect that, and those firms are the ones that you know are going to succeed. The firms that are more diverse, we sort of know this statistically. I mean, that firms that are more diverse do better than firms that are not. And but as you're looking for, if you're looking for your next job, or you're looking for something, just do all your work and pick the firm, not the job, because you know, that's where you're going to be the happiest, and those are the people who are going to lead the world.
Excellent. Thank you all. I want to go to the questions real quick. I know we're running out of time. So we have, can you indicate the cutting edge curricular issues that are likely to be of the greatest professional value to entering the wealth management space? So which kind of subject matters will make entering professionals most attractive to wealth management firms? Like, is it cryptocurrency? Is it something else? They've asked. So does anyone want to take that? And if you don't have anything to say about that, my final question for you was going to be, what's one piece of advice you would give someone looking to potentially transfer into wealth management or advance their career in wealth management? So either what are cutting edge curricular issues that will be helpful for making a career in wealth management, or what's a piece of advice?
Maybe I'll go first because that makes the easiest. It gets harder as you go along, as other people have given you this.
Go for it,
So
Harry.
this will be the dumbest one, but it's basically there's certain technical things that I think you do need to know, but the technical skills, you know, if you're at Columbia, you're taking this program, you probably have the native intelligence to get the technical skills. You do need them. You need to have some familiarity with accounting, with finance. You need to know a little bit about markets and whatever pay attention and do it. But the business of wealth management is really about people. And it's psychology. So read broadly. It goes to all the things we've been talking about. Have a more diverse group of friends and mentors. Learn how to create a personal board of advisors, that some people you can lean on as you get going forward with your career. So it's you know, the traditional answer is, you know, learn accounting, learn finance, learn marketing, learn ops research. But or you can take stuff in crypto, but that's very narrow. I mean, what we do, wealth
And
management,
it's changing all the time, right? So
well, right. So your ability to learn and have a broader palette is going to serve you in really good stead. You know, don't miss the basics, the blocking and tackling, but the other stuff is just as important, if not more so. Once you
thank
get
you. Okay, good. I'll go to Kathleen next.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think we're all in this kind of age of artificial intelligence, right? Like, we're all trying to think about and learn about how that, I'll call it a tool, will be impacting our industry, you know, how we make decisions. And I just reiterate, similar to what Harry said, like, we're in the job of giving advice. And so there are lots of tools out there, and there's lots of different products you can own. And, you know, I think sometimes people forget it's not about being right. It's about, how are you making your client feel? Are they feeling confident with a plan, able to navigate volatile markets? Or, you know, are they unsure, not comfortable? And, you know, we all have these arsenal of tools, and it is, to Harry's point, it's constantly changing. Like, you need to just read and kind of be aware, you know, but at the end of the day, it's how can we help our clients make better decisions? And there's a great book, Advice That Sticks, out there that I would recommend. But it's really kind of bringing the expertise that I may not have, but I'm going to have a network of people I can tap into to help my client make the best decisions, because it's just too much information. You're not going to know everything, but you do need to be educated on trends, um, on, you know, things that might be on people's minds. And also too, just sometimes, like, do you know how many people don't have a will or an estate plan? And even though we all know we're supposed to do it, like, it's still the first thing you bring up for people sometimes, because they just, you know, there's some human nature side of this business. So this behavioral finance piece that I think you spend time on in your curriculum, I would really focus on that, because it's really important.
Thank you. We do. And in fact, our advisor for this club is Dr. Megan Lertz, who's one of the leaders in the financial psychology space. So we're very lucky, and that's something everyone is focusing on a lot in the Columbia program. Lori, any advice for folks, curriculum-wise or just career-wise?
On the curriculum, I know like even programs like the CFA, CFP, they're looking more into like ESG, looking at material factors, non-financial factors. So I think that's becoming more and more important if you can look for that, if that's an interest area for you. I do think this concept of leaning into your passions and values, whatever that may be, like you might be very interested in sports, or you might be interested in something else, or you might be, social and environmental causes. I think one of the other trends in our industry is that there's so many more niche groups of financial advising groups that I have seen across. And so I would just say that there are more and more opportunities to kind of be an advisor and do that thing that really lights you up. And so keep looking for that, even if it doesn't show up on day one, that, know that opportunity may come across your desk at some point, and you'll be ready for it at that point. So keep leaning into your passions. And last thing, really invest in community. I talked about WISE, the community we founded for women in sustainable investing, but there are many other groups, and you can just start it with like a few people, meet once a month, once every quarter. I do that with other women at financial advisors as well that are just like G2, like next generation leaders in their organization. And it's just so powerful, and you can just share war stories in real time. And so really recommend that.
Thank you. Richard.
So I think everyone else has already answered this question very well. I'd say the big one would be is just the psychology of financial planning, that and understanding your clients, and having empathy. I almost feel like it's the degree in psychology is really something relevant, especially in getting to understanding and knowing people and how they'll act and behave. And that's really something that's really important. Yes, you do need the accounting. Yes, you need the finance, but it's really understanding people. Your second question, which was, what do you recommend from personal experiences for the advancement of the career? I think there are five things I would highlight. First, number one is I think you should seek a mentor, seek mentorship. Mentors provide insights and help navigate challenges, and they can also open the doors to potential future career opportunities. The second is build a strong network. Building a strong network of relationships can lead to business referrals and career opportunities. I'd say the third is pursue advancement certifications, such as the CFP. What that will do is will boost your credibility and open doors to higher level positions. The fourth is develop strong client relationships, understanding client goals, communicating effectively, and delivering exceptional service can differentiate you and lead to career advancement. And the fifth is take leadership roles. Demonstrating leadership qualities like integrity, vision, and strategic thinking can position you for potential career advancement. So those would be the five things that I would focus on, in terms of as your career progressing within your career.
Those are great recommendations. I love all five of those and everything you all shared. I know we're over time, so we're going to wrap up this panel, but I just want to express how grateful I am that you all took the time to help think through what people watching can do in their own lives, either to come into this field if they're considering it, or if you are working in a firm where you care about diversity and allyship and mentorship. What kind of things can you be doing? And we got a lot of great ideas here tonight. I want to thank all of our panelists and Tracy Schwartz and Dr. Megan Lertz and the organizers of Women of Wealth Management, and of course the Columbia team for all of your support. And everyone watching, I would just encourage you to go have a conversation with someone tomorrow about allyship. Maybe share the definition we shared tonight. There were so many incredible things that we talked about that you could be doing right now at work, whether that's putting someone up for a role that was offered to you, but saying, hey, I think this person might really enjoy that opportunity, or going the extra mile to find a candidate who doesn't look like everybody else you're talking to, or even just going to a colleague who maybe is one of very few people in your workspace who looks like them or has some other difference. Maybe it's socioeconomic. It's not always how you look. And saying, how's it going for you? Is there anything we could be doing differently to make you more comfortable here? Who doesn't love to hear that question? So, and also, what could we be doing better? So thank you, Harry, Richard, Lori, Kathleen. You're all fantastic. I'm sorry we have to wrap up, but I just want to say big thanks. You can unmute to say goodbye. Thank you, everyone, for watching from home. And if you want to learn more about the Columbia program, there's tons of great information online. Highly encourage you to check it out.
I think any of the four of us would say this is a great profession. It's rewarding. It's challenging. It's rewarding. It's something you can really you can do it for life and just have a great run helping people solve problems. It's encourage everybody who's taking this program to keep going. We need you.
Thank you, Harry.
Thank you for joining us.